Tampa Bay's Eric Lasser is in Tampa right now along the Riverwalk there. Eric, what are you seeing? How has it changed over the last half hour or so?
Dave, the Riverwalk is a river. That's how it's changed. We're at the corner of Ashley and Broering. That's right downtown, right by the convention center. We were there. We started to move away from that area. We were concerned because we started to see the water come up and we weren't sure that we were going to be able to get out of there. So we said, well, let's head back into town. And we weren't able to get over the bridge either. Take a look behind me and you can see that's the corner. Very, very familiar to a lot of people, I'm sure, very heavily traveled. This is the corner of Ashley Drive and Broering, just on the west side of downtown Tampa. The Riverwalk runs along this road, and that is the bridge right there that goes right over, as the sign says, the Hillsborough River. Well, right now the Hillsborough River has poured out onto Ashley Drive and over the Riverwalk. I'm just going to have you take a look from side to side. They put these barriers out here, plastic barriers, to try to keep people from crossing into the area, but they've actually lifted those barriers up at this point. Those guys are just floating around in this vicinity. We did have a couple of trucks that were able to make it through, but I can tell you there are some cars off to the left of us. In fact, you can see the headlights of one of the cars that's gotten stuck out here. A couple of trucks, as I said, did have the clearance to make it through here, but this area is currently impassable. I really just wanted to stop and bring you this picture as we were heading back towards Bayshore Boulevard, where we know that there is tremendous flooding this evening. But I wanted to be able to show you this because this is something that we were not necessarily expecting. Downtown Tampa itself is outside of Zone A. I am not positive whether or not, because it is so close to the water, that Ashley Drive would be considered part of Zone A. It certainly looks like it would be at this point, because with the amount of surge that we have right now, the water is up and over the Riverwalk and onto Ashley Drive. Right across the street, you can see one of those light boxes, an electrical box. Obviously, that's a concern. I know that just off to the left of us, there's a building over there. That's one of the pump station buildings for the city of Tampa and the water system. So that's obviously a concern when you see water high enough to reach that. Hopefully they have that buttoned down and taken care of. But you can see the fire hydrant also right here behind me. That gives you an idea of just how high the water is just at the curb here. But we were able to see somebody try to walk through here, and again, a couple of trucks. I would say that that's at least 2 to 3 feet of water right there, up and over the curb, out of the river, and onto downtown Tampa. Guys, I think we're going to be seeing more of this. One of the gentlemen that I spoke with the city, who came out here to try and resecure some of those barriers, told me that he had just come from Davis Islands, where we were also located earlier, and he said the water is now up and over the seawall and inundating some of the streets. I asked him if they were passable. He said at the southern end he does not think so. I asked him whether or not the water had gotten to the homes yet, and he said he did not believe at this point it had. And how much longer will this go on? The city is telling me that they believe at least another hour. That's that tug of war, if you will, between the tide, right, and the amount of water coming in. Tide still going up, water still coming in. That means it's rising. Eventually, things will start to level off as the wind dies down and the surge starts to recede a little bit. But I believe that next high tide here is close to 2 in the morning, so we still got a ways to go with that. Reporting live in Tampa, Eric Lasser, 10 Tampa Bay.
And Eric, you're right. Yeah, about 2 a.m. when we're expecting to see that high tide. You know, looking at that, and you talk about, you know, with the river, not quite expected that evacuation zone. Have you all been able to make it to the west side of South Tampa, over that in that West Shore area, down West Shore Boulevard? I know that's probably eventually.
We have not been over there. I have. Yeah, we have not been over there. I have spoken with people from the city. The west side, obviously, it floods. That's flood zone A, so they've got issues over there. But also farther south, almost anything south of Gandy right now and downtown, down toward Port Tampa, that's also seeing flooding coming up and over into the streets. Again, maybe not quite as bad as they thought, but we do still have time for that to be pushing in. And I will tell you that right now where I'm standing, you can see it. The wind is calm. About a half an hour ago when we were over at the convention center, it was whipping. So you have these squall lines that come through and they continue to push water up and through, but fortunately not a ton of rain. And that would obviously add to the problem, right? Because as we've demonstrated before, when the tide comes up, when the surge comes in, it covers up the pipes that allow water to run out of South Tampa. That's the drainage system. It goes into the bay. When the bay is too high, it covers the pipes, the water has nowhere to go. So if this was a combination of that tidal surge, high tide, and a ton of rain, like we saw maybe with Debbie, this area would be underwater. But right now, fortunately, We're seeing the extent of it, but it's not as bad as, believe it or not, it might have otherwise been if we had had a ton of rain along with everything else, guys.
Yeah, Eric, I'm really struck that water is moving behind you there. It's not just stationary, it's just not just rising, it's actually moving water right now.
Right. Exactly, guys, because it's not like we've had, again, with rain, where you have puddling water and it continues to rise. This is the river. The river is up over its banks. It's moving. So you're absolutely right. That water is not just being blown by the wind. It has a current to it, and that is the water that's being pushed in along with the tide coming up and with the water being pushed in by the wind and the surge. So yes, a moving river. We saw, again, somebody try to walk through there. You can see the current around their legs. Not something that you want to walk into. Again, please do not walk into this water. Do not try to drive through it. It is simply not safe to do so. And certainly, now that it's dark, there's no way of gauging the depth or what's in it. Back to you.
All right, Eric Glasser live for us in downtown Tampa.